The Texas night was wide and cruel. The wind carried the scent of mesquite and old blood, whispering through the hills like a ghost that refused to die. Beneath a crooked oak, Noah Kane hung by the neck, his boots scraping against empty air. The rope creaked under his weight, each sway another second stolen from his lungs. His hat lay in the dust, trampled flat. The moonlight caught the sweat and blood on his jaw, painting his face silver and hollow. A few yards away, laughter cracked through the dark. Eli Malone, a boy dressed like a man, kicked at the dirt with his polished boots. The glow from his campfire carved his grin into something mean. Around him stood 3 hired guns, their rifles glinting orange in the firelight. They looked up at Noah as if admiring a prize calf. "Well, look at that," Eli drawled, spitting into the dust. The mighty Noah Kane. Thought he could play savior to a bunch of redskins. Now he's just decor for the vultures. Noah's throat burned as he tried to breathe. The rope bit into his skin, but he managed to rasp, "You don't know what you're doing, boy." Eli smirked. "I know exactly what I'm doing. My pa says you're standing on land that ain't yours, helping people that ain't ours. You chose the wrong side, Kane." Noah didn't answer. He couldn't. His body trembled against the pull of the rope, every breath shallower than the last. The campfire's light flickered across his eyes, steady, unbroken, even as the edges of his vision blurred. He'd seen worse in the war, but this betrayal was harder to swallow. When Eli finally grew bored, he gave the rope a tug just for fun. "Leave him hanging. Coyotes will finish the job by dawn," he said. Then he tipped his hat, the kind only rich men wore, and walked off into the darkness. The horse's hooves faded into the wind, leaving nothing but the creak of rope and the groan of branches. For a while, silence ruled the clearing. Then came a faint rustle in the brush. A step, light but sure. A figure moved between the shadows of the oaks, a glimmer of steel in her hand. Tala, though the name she used among strangers was Sarah Dawson, crept closer to the tree. The wind tugged at her dark hair, and her long leather coat brushed the dust at her boots. Her face was hard, beautiful in a way carved by loss, not vanity. She had the eyes of someone who'd seen her world burn to ash and kept walking anyway. She'd followed Malone's men since sunset, waiting, watching, not for mercy, but for a chance to decide what kind of person she still was. Her people would have left a man like Kane to hang. He was one of them, after all. White, rancher, soldier once, the kind who'd carried orders that destroyed her village. But Eli Malone's cruelty had turned her stomach. The Malones had taken everything from her tribe. They didn't care about color, only power. The rattle of a snake made her freeze. It lay coiled near the base of the oak, its eyes gleaming like 2 drops of moonlight. Tala didn't flinch. She eased around it, knife in hand, gaze locked on Noah Kane. He wasn't dead yet. His eyes fluttered open when he heard her boots crunch the dirt. His voice came raw and cracked. "That you, Malone?" Tala didn't answer. She took a breath, grabbed the lowest branch and started to climb. The bark scraped her palms, the knife clenched between her teeth. Her heart pounded against her ribs as the branch groaned under her weight. She could smell the rope, rough, tarred hemp, soaked with blood and sweat. When she reached him, his face was ghost white, lips tinged blue. "Don't," he gasped. "You'll fall." She muttered through her teeth. "Then you better not die before I finish." With a quick flick of her wrist, the blade bit into the rope. Fibers snapped one by one, each twang loud in the night. The last strand gave way, and Noah dropped like a sandbag into the dirt below. The branch jolted, nearly throwing Tala off. She steadied herself, then climbed down, landing beside him. He lay motionless, gasping, his chest heaving as air fought its way back into his lungs. She crouched and loosened the rope around his neck, cutting it clean. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind and the distant call of a coyote. Then Noah rasped, "Why'd you do it?" She met his eyes. "'Cause I couldn't stand watching another man die for Malone's lies." He tried to sit up, but pain folded him in half. Tala caught his shoulder and pushed him gently back down. "Easy," she said. "You hang long enough. The world spins even after you touch ground." Noah coughed, then let out a breath that sounded halfway between a laugh and a groan. "You Apache?" Her jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" Maybe, he said, his eyes narrowing. Last one of your kind I saw tried to cut my throat. Then maybe you deserved it. Her tone was sharp, but her hands were steady as she cut the rope from his wrists. Don't move. You'll tear your windpipe. The sarcasm faded from his eyes. He looked at her again. Really looked this time. Not as an enemy, just as a person. The firelight caught her cheekbones, the faint scar that ran along her jaw. A survivor's mark. You could have walked away, he said. Would have been easier. Tala stood, scanning the horizon where Malone's men had gone. Easier don't always mean right. She stepped back to her horse, a lean bay mare tethered in the brush. From her saddlebag, she pulled a canteen and tossed it to him. He caught it weakly, drank, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. You got a name, he asked. Sarah Dawson, she said automatically. Then after a pause, but folks that know better call me Tala. He nodded slowly. Tala, he repeated, tasting the word. I owe you my life. She smirked faintly. Don't spend it stupid, then. A flicker of movement in the distance made her freeze. Lanterns, 3 of them, bobbing in the dark like fireflies from hell. The Malones hadn't gone far. Get up, she whispered. We ain't got long. Noah tried to stand, his legs trembling, one hand gripping the tree for balance. The color had started to return to his face, though his voice was still rough. Can you ride? Better than you, I reckon. She grabbed his arm and slung it over her shoulder. Together they moved toward her horse, every step a struggle between exhaustion and urgency. The night hummed with danger, every whisper of wind, every crunch of dry grass. Behind them, a gunshot cracked the silence. The bullet hit the tree where Noah had just hung, splintering bark. Eli's voice echoed across the plain. He's alive! Find him! Tala shoved Noah forward. Move! They stumbled through the brush, reaching the mare just as more shots tore through the dark. She swung into the saddle, then yanked him up behind her. The horse reared, snorting, then bolted into the night. The world blurred, moonlight flashing off dry creek beds, mesquite branches clawing at their arms. Noah clung to her waist, coughing, his breath hot against her back. She could hear the riders coming, hooves pounding, dogs barking in the distance. You sure you know where you're going? He shouted over the wind. Clearwater's ridge, she called back. If we make it to the river, we lose their scent. A bullet whizzed past her ear. She spurred the horse harder. The wind stung her eyes, but she didn't slow down. Not until the land dropped away beneath them, and the roar of water filled the air. The creek shimmered like broken glass in the moonlight. She yanked the reins, steering the horse down the embankment. Cold water splashed up their legs as they plunged in. The current bit at them, but it masked their trail. When they reached the far bank, Tala pulled up and listened. Silence. Only the river talking now. Noah slid off, collapsing to his knees. You saved me twice tonight, he said quietly. She looked at him, her face unreadable. Don't make me regret it. The wind picked up again, sweeping the scent of gunpowder and wet earth into the night. Tala turned her horse toward the east, where the first hint of dawn touched the horizon. She didn't look back. Behind them, the old oak creaked once more under the weight of the empty rope, swaying like a ghost that refused to rest. The wind cut through the canyon like a dull blade, dragging dust and the smell of gunpowder along with it. The creek behind them had gone quiet, leaving only the sound of hoofbeats fading into the night. Tala slowed her horse, scanning the horizon before turning toward the rocky ridge ahead. Dismount, she whispered. Noah slid off the mare, stumbling when his boots hit the ground. He caught himself on a stone, breathing heavy, his throat raw from the rope. You got a plan, he rasped, or we just ride until the buzzards take us? She didn't look at him. Both, maybe. They led the horse into a narrow ravine lined with scrub oak and brittle cactus. The moonlight barely reached the ground here. A blessing. The air smelled of stone and sage. Tala found a hollow beneath a cliff face, small enough to hide them from view, but deep enough to break the wind. Here, she said, kneeling beside him. Sit. You're losing too much blood. Noah obeyed, though suspicion still flickered in his eyes. She pulled a small pouch from her saddlebag. Strips of cloth, herbs, a flask of whiskey. He winced as she poured the liquor across the raw rope burns on his neck and wrists. The pain hit like fire. "Damn," he hissed. "You trying to kill me twice?" Tala smirked faintly. "If I was, you'd already be dead." She wrapped his wounds tight, her fingers quick and practiced. He watched her hands move, noticing the small scars across her knuckles. Marks of someone who'd learned to survive the hard way. When she finished, she sat back, wiping her palms on her trousers. "Why help me?" he asked again. His voice was quieter this time. Less demand, more confusion. Tala's eyes flicked toward the darkness beyond the cave mouth. "'Cause I know what it's like to be left hanging." Noah studied her in the dim light. The fire she'd built was small, just a handful of twigs and dry grass, but it cast enough glow to trace her profile. High cheekbones, sharp nose, eyes that carried too many miles. She looked young, but not soft. Not anymore. "You from around here?" he asked. "Used to be," she said, poking at the fire with a stick. Sparks leapt and died. "This land was Apache once. My father hunted along Blackwater Creek. My mother cooked by this same ridge." He waited. She didn't speak for a long moment, and when she did, her voice came low, steady, stripped of tears. "They came one morning. Soldiers, bounty men. Said our tribe was hiding weapons. All we had was food, blankets, a few horses. They burned it anyway. The smoke rose for 2 days. When it cleared, half of us were gone." Her jaw tightened. "They hanged my mother on a cottonwood tree. Said it'd teach the rest of us to behave." Noah stared at the fire, silent. The orange light flickered across his face, throwing years into his eyes. "That wasn't me," he said at last. "No," she replied, "but it was your kind." The words hung there, heavy as stone, sharp as a knife left in the wound. For a while neither spoke. The fire crackled softly, and somewhere outside a coyote called, its voice long and hollow. After a time, Noah said, "You folks burned our supply wagons once, killed 3 of my men while they slept, left their scalps hanging on the wheels." Tala didn't flinch. "And yours burned ours back. Maybe hell's big enough for both." He looked up then, meeting her gaze. For the first time, he didn't see just an Apache girl. He saw the same thing he saw every morning in the mirror. Someone still breathing when too many others weren't. The wind shifted, bringing the chill of desert night deeper into the cave. Tala tossed another handful of twigs onto the fire, but the flame only sputtered. Noah reached for his canteen and handed it to her. "Drink. You earned it." She hesitated, then took it, sipping carefully before passing it back. "You got family?" she asked. "Had," he said. "Wife and boy. Fever took 'em both 4 winters ago." "I'm sorry," she said softly. He nodded once. "Don't be. The land don't care who it buries." The silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. It was something else, something like respect. Outside, the wind eased, carrying with it the faint sound of horses far in the distance. The Malones were still hunting. The thought settled in Noah's gut like lead. He turned to her. "You ever kill a man?" Tala's eyes found his across the firelight. "Only when I had to." He nodded slowly. "Guess that makes 2 of us." For the first time, she smiled, a small, sad curve of her lips. "Difference is, you had orders. I had none." "Don't mean mine weighed less," he said quietly. "Orders don't make a thing right, just easier to blame." They sat like that for a while, 2 souls carved out by the same storm, too stubborn to admit it. When the fire burned low, Tala rose and moved toward the entrance of the cave. She crouched there, scanning the valley below. The wide expanse of desert silvered by moonlight, the distant flicker of lanterns still searching. "They ain't given up," she said. Noah stood slowly, his movements stiff but steady. "They never do. Jack Malone don't like loose ends." "You worked for him?" "Didn't have a choice. He owned half the valley. I took his loan to buy my ranch after the war. Guess he figured hanging me was cheaper than collecting." Tala turned back toward him. "So now you're free." He gave a humorless laugh. "Free? With half the county wanting me dead and no place to run?" "Could be worse," she said. "You could still be hanging." He looked at her, the faint smirk, the defiance glinting in her dark eyes, and almost smiled. "Almost. You always talk like that? Only when someone's breathing my air, she shot back. They gathered what little they had, his revolver, a handful of bullets, her knife, and the mare. Before leaving, Noah stamped out the fire, grinding the embers into ash. The smell of smoke lingered, bitter and clean, like the memory of something already lost. They walked until dawn, following a trail that wound through red stone and low brush. The first light spilled over the hills, turning the dust gold. Noah's limp grew worse, but he said nothing. Tala noticed, though. She stopped and tore a strip from her sleeve, wrapping it around his leg where blood had soaked through his trousers. You don't have to, he said. I know, she replied. Sit still. He watched her work, the morning sun catching in her hair. You ever think about leaving this place? And he asked quietly. Starting fresh somewhere that ain't burned to hell? She tied the knot tight, then looked up. Every damn day. But the land's got a way of holding you, even when it hurts. He understood that, more than she could know. When they reached the ridge, they stopped to rest. From there, they could see the vast plains stretching east, dotted with sage and dry riverbeds. Beyond that, faint as smoke, lay the shimmer of Devil's Ridge, the next stretch of unforgiving country they'd have to cross. Tala shaded her eyes with her hand. If we make it past that ridge by nightfall, they'll lose our trail. And if we don't? Noah asked. She swung herself back onto the horse. Then we die tired. He almost laughed. You sure ain't like any woman I ever met. Good, she said, offering him a hand. The others probably bored you to death. He took it, and she pulled him up behind her. The horse started forward, hooves kicking up little clouds of dust that hung in the air like ghosts. Behind them, the rising sun turned the horizon red, blood and fire bleeding together. Noah looked back once, at the smoke far behind them and the world they'd both lost. Dust and blood, he muttered under his breath. Tala glanced over her shoulder. What? He shook his head. Nothing. Just reckon that's all this land's ever been made of. They rode on without another word, the wind whipping through their hair, carrying the echoes of 1,000 ghosts. Soldiers, tribesmen, and dreamers alike, all swallowed by the same endless, hungry west. Dawn cracked open like a gunshot over the Texas plains. The first light spilled across the mesas, sharp and gold, cutting through the dust that hung low after a long night of silence. In the distance, the smoke from cook fires coiled up into the sky, a bad omen for anyone still running. Farther north, in the Malone ranch house, Jack Malone leaned over a blood-stained table, eyes hard as dry creek stones. His son Eli sat across from him, hand wrapped in a bandage, face pale but defiant. The men around them, ranchers, drifters, bounty chasers, watched in silence as Jack slammed a wanted poster down onto the table. Noah Kane, Jack growled, voice like gravel. Alive if you can drag him, dead if he's too heavy. $200 cash and half a parcel of my land to the man who brings me his head. A murmur rippled through the room. $200 could feed a man for months, maybe even buy him freedom. But Jack wasn't done. And there's a girl with him, he continued, tapping the poster with a knife. Apache. Calls herself Sarah Dawson. She's worth 50. Bring her alive. She knows something I want. Eli spoke, his voice bitter. That half-breed cut me. Nearly took my hand clean off. Jack's eyes narrowed. Then you best hope she dies slow. Outside, horses stirred in their pens, sniffing the dry wind. The hunt had begun. By mid-morning, Tala and Noah were miles away, cutting through a maze of ravines. The land here was harsh, a stretch of red rock and bone-dry cactus, where the sun beat down like a hammer. They hadn't spoken much since sunrise. Every sound carried for miles, and silence was safer than words. Tala led the way, her rifle slung across her back, her eyes scanning the horizon. The mare's hooves crunched over gravel. Behind her, Noah rode a borrowed horse, stiff from pain but alert. The wound on his leg had bled through the bandage again, staining the denim dark. From a rise, Tala stopped and pointed toward the valley. A thin column of smoke climbed into the sky. Campfire, she said. South Ridge. He squinted. Could be ranchers. Could be hunters, she replied. He didn't argue. The look in her eyes told him she was sure. They turned east, following a narrow trail that wound toward a dry creek bed. The air shimmered with heat, though the sun was barely up. Buzzards circled high above, patient, hungry. They reached the creek just as the wind shifted. Dust rolled down the slope behind them. Noah's hand went to his Colt. "Riders," Tala whispered. They dismounted fast, leading their horses into the dry gully. The ground was cracked and pale, scattered with tumbleweed and the bones of long-dead cattle. They crouched low behind a fallen log. The sound grew, the steady rhythm of hoofbeats, the jingle of tack, men's voices. Then came the gleam of rifles. "Malone's men," Noah muttered. "Guess they found your poster," Tala said dryly. "Hell," he whispered. "They move quick." 3 riders crested the ridge, scanning the valley. Another 2 followed, circling wide. They were careful, professional, not some greenhorn cowhands. These were bounty men. One of them, a tall figure in a duster, dismounted and bent to study the ground. His voice carried over the wind. "Tracks, 2 horses, headed downriver." Tala's hand tightened around her knife. "They'll find us if we stay." "Then we don't stay," Noah said, cocking the Colt. "You move first. I'll cover." "Or you'll die first," she shot back. But she didn't wait for him to argue. She slipped from cover, silent as a shadow, moving along the creek bed. The men hadn't spotted her yet. Noah stayed low, tracking their movement. The first bounty man lifted his rifle, scanning the gully, and Noah fired. The shot echoed like thunder. The man went down, rolling in the dust. Chaos erupted. Horses reared, men shouted, bullets whined off stone. Noah ducked behind the log, firing again. One rider spun from his saddle, another scrambled for cover. Tala hit the dirt, rolling behind a boulder. She pulled her rifle free and returned fire, the recoil slamming into her shoulder. A bullet clipped the rock beside her, sending shards flying. Another grazed her arm, tearing through the sleeve and painting her skin red. She gritted her teeth, ignoring the pain. "You call that cover, old man?" "Wasn't planning on living forever," Noah yelled back. The gunfire built to a fever. Smoke and dust choked the air. A horse screamed as it went down. Tala saw one of the bounty men creeping along the bank, knife drawn. She swung her rifle up, fired, missed, and in that split second he lunged toward Noah. "Noah!" she shouted. The man slammed into Noah, both of them crashing into the dust. The Colt went flying. They grappled, rolling, fists in fury. Noah's hand found the man's throat, but the bounty hunter slammed a knee into his ribs, knocking the breath out of him. The man's knife flashed in the sun, aimed for Noah's heart. Then a blur. Tala's voice, a grunt, the sound of steel meeting flesh. She drove her Apache knife into the man's back, twisting hard. He went still. The blade's hilt trembled in her hand before she yanked it free. Blood spattered across her arm and Noah's shirt. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Noah looked up at her, chest heaving. "Didn't think a girl like you could shoot that clean," he said between breaths. She met his gaze, eyes dark and steady. "Didn't think a man like you could bleed that much and still talk." He laughed in a short, rough sound. "Fair enough." The last of the bounty riders was fleeing, his horse kicking up a storm of dust as he vanished down the ridge. The others lay scattered, 3 dead, 1 wounded, and crawling through the mud. Tala walked over, kicked the man's rifle away, and stared down at him. "Tell Jack Malone," she said coldly, "next time he wants to hang a man, he better bring his own rope." The bounty man spat blood, nodded weakly, and stumbled off toward his horse. Noah leaned against the log, breathing hard. The wound in his leg had opened again, blood soaking through. Tala tore a strip from her sash and tied it tight. He didn't protest this time. "You sure know how to pick a fight," he said. "You sure know how to lose one," she replied, and he almost smiled again. They moved quick after that, knowing Malone's men would come back with twice the numbers. They followed the creek downstream until it narrowed to a trickle, then crossed into the shadow of the foothills. The world grew quieter, save for the hum of insects and the steady rasp of their own breathing. By late afternoon, they found a small canyon where the cliffs met the desert. The air smelled of sage and sweat. They made camp under a rock ledge, far from the trail. Tala cleaned the knife in silence. wiping it on her bandana before sliding it back into its sheath. Noah watched her from across the fire, his expression unreadable. "You saved my hide back there," he said. She shrugged. "Couldn't let Malone have the satisfaction." "Still," he said, "you didn't have to." "Neither did you," she replied, eyes on the fire. "Back at that tree." He thought about that. The crack of rope and her hand cutting him free. The smell of dust and blood still lingered, mingling with the smoke. "You ever wonder," he said after a while, "why folks like us keep fighting? What's left worth fighting for?" Tala looked into the firelight, her face carved in shadow. "Maybe just not being hunted," she said. "Maybe that's enough." The flames popped, sending a small burst of sparks into the air. The canyon walls held the sound close, like they didn't want to let it go. Outside, the last light of day bled away, leaving the world red, then gray, then black. Somewhere far behind them, the hunters were saddling up again. By the time the sun dropped behind the hills, the land had turned red and mean. Dust clung to the air like smoke, and the rocks glowed with the last heat of the day. Tala rode ahead, guiding the horse through a winding path that cut deep into the cliffs. Noah Kane followed close behind, his eyes half shut against the glare. His shirt was stiff with dried blood, his leg bound tight, but he hadn't said a word in hours. The silence between them had grown heavy, not hostile, just full of things neither knew how to say. The trail narrowed until it was little more than a crack between stone walls. The mare's hooves clattered against the rock, echoing down the canyon like the ticking of a clock. Somewhere above, a hawk screamed, its cry stretching thin in the wind. Tala slowed her horse and looked up. "Devil's Ridge," she said quietly. Her voice carried something Noah hadn't heard before. Reverence, maybe, or grief. They dismounted near the mouth of the ravine. The air was cooler here, shaded by the cliffs. A stream trickled somewhere underground, its sound faint as breath. Noah turned a slow circle, taking in the place. The ground was littered with ashes and bones bleached white by time. Charred timbers jutted from the earth like broken ribs. On the canyon walls, faint carvings marked the stone. Lines and spirals, the remains of Apache symbols long since forgotten by the world. Tala knelt near one of them, brushing her fingers across the rough surface. "This was my home," she said, barely above a whisper. "Before the cavalry came, before they called this land cursed." Noah didn't move. The wind tugged at his coat, stirring the dust around his boots. He'd heard stories. The army raids, the burned villages, the prisoners marched barefoot across the desert. But stories never looked like this. "God," he muttered, "they burned it all." Tala stood, her face still but her eyes sharp as flint. "Not God, men." He looked away, shame twisting in his gut. "We were told this was justice." "Was it?" she asked. He didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the carvings again. A circle with 3 arrows pointing inward. "What's that mean?" "Prayer," she said, "for safe passage to the other side." She traced it with her fingertip, the motion slow, deliberate. "When my people died, they believed the wind would carry their spirits through the canyons." Noah stared at the dust swirling between them. "And do you believe that?" "I used to," she said softly. "Now I just hear the wind, and it sounds like ghosts." They made camp near the edge of the ridge, where a wall of rock shielded them from sight. Tala built a small fire with dry mesquite branches, the smoke rising straight up into the night. The flames painted the canyon in shades of gold and red, dancing across the carved prayers like they were alive again. Noah sat across from her, rubbing his wrist where the rope scars still stung. His Colt revolver rested on the ground beside him, dull and worn, its handle cracked from years of use. He watched Tala move, the way she laid the firewood, the precision in her hands. She was all control, but there was sadness in it too. When she finally sat down, he said quietly, "You said this was your home. What happened to your father?" She didn't look at him. The firelight caught the edge of her face, turning her eyes to amber. "They took him when I was 10, she said. "Army patrol caught him near the Pecos, accused him of killing a white trader. He didn't speak their language, so they called it guilt." Her hand tightened around the knife on her belt. "They hung him 2 days later, said it was justice for peace." Noah swallowed hard. The fire popped between them. I was there, she continued. Watch from the trees. They made the kids stand close so we'd remember. I remember. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she didn't look away from the fire. Noah felt something inside him shift, that slow, painful realization of what his kind had done in the name of order. He took a long breath and reached for his revolver. Here, he said, turning it in his hand and offering it across the fire. You'll need this more than I do. She blinked at him, surprised. Why? He gave a small, humorless smile. Because the men coming after us don't care if you're Apache or Angel. They see brown skin, they shoot first. Tala studied him, searching for the trick, the hidden motive. But there was none. Only exhaustion and something that looked almost like respect. She reached across the flames and took the gun. Their fingers brushed, and for a second the air between them stilled. Thank you, she said simply. Noah nodded. Just don't point it at me unless you have to. That earned the faintest smile from her, quick but real. The night deepened around them. Coyotes called in the distance, their cries echoing through the canyon like a mournful song. The moon rose high, silvering the ridge and the scattered bones below. Tala handed him a strip of dried venison. He took it without a word. They ate in silence, the fire crackling softly. After a while, Noah said, You ever think about leaving? Find some place that don't remember you? She chewed, then shook her head. The land remembers. Don't matter where you go, you carry it with you. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I reckon you're right. For a while they just sat there, listening to the wind whisper through the stones. Then Tala reached into her pouch and pulled out something small, a smooth round stone painted with white ash. She held it out to him. What's that? He asked. My father gave it to me, she said. Said it would keep me safe. I think it's just a rock. He chuckled softly. Sometimes that's all a man needs, something to hold on to. She turned the stone in her hand, the firelight glinting off its surface. You got something like that? He hesitated, then pulled a silver ring from his pocket. Plain, worn, too small for his hands. My wife's, he said, died of fever. I keep it so I don't forget who I used to be. Tala looked at the ring, then at him. And who are you now? Noah stared into the fire. Working on it. The flames crackled and hissed, throwing shadows that danced across the canyon walls. Tala leaned back against the stone, wrapping her blanket around her shoulders. The exhaustion in her face softened, just a little. Noah tossed another stick onto the fire, watching the sparks spiral upward until they disappeared into the dark. Devil's Ridge, he said quietly. Hell of a name for a place like this. Tala's eyes were half closed. We didn't call it that, she murmured. We called it Seda, the red stone. The army gave it the devil's name after they burned it. Noah looked out at the valley. The scars, the ashes, the prayers carved into stone. For the first time in a long while, he felt small, like the earth itself was judging him. When the fire burned low, he lay back against the dirt, staring at the stars scattered across the night sky. Beside him, Tala's breathing evened out, slow and steady. Somewhere in the wind, the carvings on the walls seemed to whisper, the old language carried on through time. Noah closed his eyes and let it wash over him. The ghosts, the guilt, and the strange peace that came with finally seeing the truth. He didn't know what waited beyond Devil's Ridge. More hunters, more blood, maybe worse. But for now there was quiet. For now they were just two people under the same sky, sharing fire and silence in a land that had forgotten mercy. The morning broke hard and colorless. Winds scraped across the ridge, stirring up the ash of old bones. Noah Kane saddled the mare in silence, while Tala buried the last of the coals from their fire. Neither spoke much. Words like bullets were best saved for when they counted. They rode out of Devil's Ridge just after sunrise. The land ahead stretched wide and mean. Gullies, thorn brush, dry creek beds glinting like scars. Noah's leg throbbed under the bandage, but he pushed through, jaw tight. Tala rode ahead, her eyes scanning the horizon. She'd gone quiet again, wrapped in her own storm. By noon, the heat was heavy enough to blur the line between earth and sky. When they stopped to rest near a patch of scrub oak, Noah noticed smoke to the east. Small, steady, too disciplined to be a campfire. That's no drifter, he said. Tala squinted into the light. Could be a scout, Malone's men. Could be worse, Noah muttered. Could be soldiers. They rode on, slower now, staying close to the ridges. A hawk circled overhead, its shadow gliding across the canyon floor. The silence felt different, not empty this time, but watchful. Then came the sound. Faint at first, a metallic clink, like spurs brushing stone. Tala froze, motioning for Noah to stop. A man stepped from behind a stand of mesquite trees, his rifle low but ready. His beard was gray, his coat frayed, and his eyes held that particular calm that only men who'd seen too many wars could carry. "Well, I'll be damned," the man said, voice rough as whiskey on gravel. "Didn't think I'd see you again, Kane." Noah stared for a second, then let out a slow breath. "Will Dawson?" Will smiled, tired, genuine. "Still breathing, I see." "Barely," Noah said. He nodded toward Tala. "She's the reason." Will's gaze shifted. His expression changed. Not anger, not surprise, but something heavier. "That's so." Tala studied him, wary but unflinching. "You know my name?" Will took off his hat, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Knew your mother," he said quietly, "and your father. He was a good man." Tala's jaw tightened. "You rode with the men who killed him." "I know." Will's eyes didn't waver. "I did, and I ain't forgot it. Your brother pulled me out of a fire 2 years later, down near the San Pedro. Could have left me to burn. Didn't, so I reckon that debt's still standing." The air went still. The only sound was the wind tugging through the trees. Then Noah said, "We need a place to lay low. Malone's got half the county riding for us." Will nodded. "I heard he's gathering a posse, mercenaries, old soldiers, even bounty scum from across the border. Says he's gonna cleanse Apache land and take what's left of yours while he's at it." "Sounds like him," Noah said bitterly. "There's an old homestead by Clearwater Springs," Will said. "Been empty since the drought. We can hole up there for a spell. But if Malone's bringing a war, he'll come straight through that valley. Then we make sure he don't come out," Tala said. Will looked at her, this young woman with fire in her eyes, blood on her hands, and the ghost of her tribe behind her. He gave a small nod. "You sound like your father." They reached the homestead by dusk. The place sat crooked against the hills, half buried in sage and dust. The porch sagged, the windows were shot out, but it had a roof and a well. Luxury by frontier standards. The air smelled faintly of water and pine. Will hitched the horses and walked the perimeter, scanning for tracks. "Ain't nobody been here in months," he said. "We'll make do." Inside, Noah lowered himself into a chair that creaked like it might give up the ghost any second. Tala found an old lamp and struck a match, the flame flickering over the cracked walls. The shadows danced like restless spirits. Will leaned his rifle against the doorframe. "There's a cellar out back. Still got some tools. Maybe powder. We'll need to fortify the place." Tala nodded, already moving. She dragged a broken table toward the door, testing its weight. "I can rig traps," she said. "Snare lines, tripwires. My people used to hunt men long before your kind did." Will's eyebrow lifted. "I don't doubt it." Noah smirked. "She's saved my hide more times than I can count. Let her do what she does." "Fair enough," Will said. "But if Malone's bringing 20 men, we'll need more than snares and bad luck." They spent the next hours working in silence. Will patched the windows with planks scavenged from the barn. Noah sorted through old ammunition, discarding what was damp or warped. Tala sharpened her knife, then set out bear traps near the fence line. The sound of metal on stone echoed through the dusk. When the last light faded, Will came inside, wiping his brow. He poured 3 cups of coffee from a pot that tasted mostly of smoke. They drank by the dim glow of the lamp, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Tala spoke. "You said Malone's raising a war party. Why?" Will sighed. "Because men like him can't stand losing. You embarrassed his boy, made him bleed. That's enough to make the devil himself saddle up." "And the Apache lands?" she asked. Will looked down. "They've been trying to push your people off for years. Railroads, ranchers, soldiers. Malone's just the loudest one left. He thinks if he kills enough of you, The land'll forget who it belonged to. Tala's voice dropped low. The land don't forget. Will met her gaze. No, it don't. Noah leaned back, the chair creaking under him. So what's the plan, old man? Will's mouth twitched into a half smile. Same as always. Survive the night, kill the bastards, and see what's left of us come morning. That earned a faint laugh from Noah. You ain't changed. Neither have you, Will said. Still finding trouble in all the wrong places. Tala rose and walked to the window. Outside, the moon hung low over the valley, silvering the springs below. She could almost hear the whisper of the past. Children's laughter, drums in the distance, her mother's voice calling her name. It hurt to remember. You ever regret it? She asked quietly. Will glanced over. What's that? The things you did, the orders you followed. Will took a slow sip from his cup, eyes far away. Every damn day. But regret don't fix what's broke. All a man can do is stand where he is and try not to run from the truth. Tala nodded, though her throat tightened. Then I reckon you're doing better than most. Later that night, the wind picked up. The boards creaked. The horses shifted nervously in the barn. Noah sat by the door cleaning his rifle, the metal gleaming faintly in the lamplight. Will laid out a map on the table, marking the routes Malone's men might take. They'll come from the north, he said. There's a ridge up there. Good place for ambush. But if they bring fire, this whole place will burn. Then we hold till dawn, Noah said. After that, they'll lose the light. Will nodded. You always were an optimist. Just stubborn. Tala appeared from the doorway, carrying a handful of freshly loaded shells. Her hands were stained with oil and dirt. Traps are set, she said. They won't get close without losing a few legs first. Will gave her a nod of approval. Your father would have been proud. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then maybe he's watching. Outside, thunder rumbled, not from the sky, but from the ground. The distant thud of hooves. A storm of men was coming, riding hard through the dark. Will blew out the lamp, plunging the room into shadow. Best get some rest while you can, he said quietly. Tomorrow's going to be long. Noah loaded his Colt, the sound sharp in the stillness. Tala moved to the window, staring into the night where the ridge met the stars. It was the calm before the storm, the kind that only came once in a lifetime, when men knew the next sunrise might be their last. The Texas dawn came red as blood. The first rays broke over the plains, painting the dry hills of Clearwater in firelight. The air was still, heavy, that kind of silence that came only before violence. Noah Kane stood by the corral fence, tightening the strap of his Colt. The smell of coffee and gun oil hung thick in the air. From the loft above, Tala moved like a ghost among the rafters, loading her Winchester with calm precision. Strands of her dark hair caught the early sun streaming through the slats. The rifle sat snug against her shoulder, a perfect fit, as if the weapon had waited its whole life for her hands. By the barn door, Will Dawson sat at a table with his shotgun across his knees, his weathered face hard but peaceful. He'd seen too many dawns like this one, and every single one carried the same promise: blood and smoke. The horses in the stable pawed the dirt nervously, ears twitching at something distant, and then they all heard it, the low, growing thunder of hooves rolling across the valley. Noah looked to Will. They're coming. Will rose, cracked his neck, and pulled the brim of his hat low. Then let's make it worth their ride. A black column of riders appeared at the ridge, 10 or more, their silhouettes cut sharp against the morning light. At their head rode Jack Malone, his long coat flapping, his white stallion gleaming like bone. His son Eli rode at his right, a rifle resting across his thigh. Behind them came a crew of bounty men, sunburnt, grinning, hungry for pay. They stopped just out of range, dust swirling around them. Jack raised his arm, signaling silence. His voice carried like thunder. Give me the ranch, Kane. Ain't no Apache worth dying for. Noah stood from behind the fence, his rifle slung across his back. His voice came back steady, rough but strong. This land's soaked in enough blood, Malone. You want mine, come take it. Eli spat in the dirt. He's gone soft, Pa. Let's finish it. Jack grinned, a cold, thin smile. Burn it down. The first shot came from the ridge, a rifle crack that split the morning wide open. The bullet took a splinter from the porch beam beside Noah's head. He ducked low, rolled behind the fence post, and fired back. The valley erupted in noise, gunfire echoing off the rocks, the scream of horses, the wild hiss of ricochets. Will's shotgun roared twice, sending one of the bounty men tumbling from his saddle. Tala's rifle answered next, her shot precise and clean. Another rider fell, clutching his shoulder as his horse bolted. The air turned thick with smoke and dust. Bullets tore through fence boards and shattered the windows of the ranch house. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the sharp tang of burning wood. One of the oil lamps inside had gone up. From the loft, Tala reloaded, her hands steady even as a round punched through the wall inches from her arm. She leaned out the window, sighted down the ridge, and fired again. The echo rolled through the valley like thunder chasing lightning. "Good shootin'!" Will shouted up to her, ramming 2 more shells into his shotgun. "Don't jinx it!" she yelled back, ducking as another bullet slammed into the beam above her head. Noah crouched by the fence, heart hammering. He could see Eli riding low across the valley floor, trying to flank them. The boy's pale hair glinted in the sun like a snake's skin. "Will!" Noah shouted. "Right side!" Will turned just as a rifle cracked from the brush. The old soldier dove for cover, returning fire. His shot dropped the man who'd been creeping closer, but more were coming. "They're circling us," Tala called out. 5 on the ridge, 3 in the draw. "Let 'em come," Noah growled. "They'll choke on their own dust before they take this place." The fight raged on. Bullets cut through smoke. Horses screamed and men cursed. The barn doors caught fire, flames licking up the sides like devils clawing their way out. Tala shifted positions, her face streaked with ash, eyes sharp as iron. Through the haze, she saw Eli take aim from behind a fallen mesquite tree, his rifle steady, pointed straight at Noah's back. Time slowed. She shouted, "Noah!" Before the word left her mouth, she fired. The shot rang like judgment. Eli's head snapped back, the rifle dropping from his hands. He fell hard, the dust rising to swallow him whole. Silence rippled across the field for half a second, the kind that only comes when fate holds its breath. Then Jack Malone's roar broke it wide open. "You killed my boy!" He spurred his stallion forward, firing wildly. Bullets ripped through the porch posts, one grazing Noah's shoulder. He spun, blood splattering the dirt. Tala reloaded and took aim again, but Jack moved too fast, circling, firing, screaming his rage to the wind. Will burst from the barn, shotgun blazing. He hit one of Malone's men square in the chest, then another, but a third rifle cracked and Will stumbled. The buckshot tore into his side, spinning him around. "No!" Noah shouted, running toward him. Will hit the ground hard, his shotgun falling beside him. Blood spread dark across his shirt. Noah dropped to his knees, dragging him toward cover. "Stay with me, Will," he said, voice breaking. Will gave a weak grin. "Ain't the first time I've been shot. Won't be the last either," Noah said, trying to press his hand over the wound. Will's breath hitched. "Don't let that bastard win." A gun cocked behind them. Jack Malone staggering off his horse, his revolver raised. Smoke curled from the muzzle, his face twisted in hate. "You should have stayed hanging, Kane," Jack spat. Noah turned, reaching for his Colt. Too slow. The shot came, but it wasn't his. Tala stepped out from behind the burning barn, rifle steady against her shoulder. The smoke parted just enough for her to see her mark, the gleam of the gold dollar pin on Jack's chest. She pulled the trigger. The bullet struck true, punching through the gold coin and into his heart. Jack stumbled backward, the gun falling from his hand. He looked down at the blood spreading across his shirt, then up at Tala, the Apache girl he'd called less than human. He fell without a word. The gunfire faded. The air was heavy with smoke and silence. The valley was littered with bodies, horses, and the smell of burned wood. Tala dropped her rifle and ran to Noah's side. Will lay still, his hand resting over his chest, eyes half closed but peaceful. "He's gone," Noah whispered. Tala knelt beside him, bowing her head. For a long while, neither spoke. The fire crackled nearby, wind sighing through the broken boards. When Noah finally stood, he looked out at the horizon, the sun rising higher, turning the smoke to gold. "It's over," Tala said quietly. Noah shook his head. Nothing this side of the grave's ever really over. She watched him a moment, then bent to pick up his hat where it had fallen. She dusted it off and handed it to him. "Then let's start what comes next." He took it, nodding once. Around them, the land of Clearwater lay scarred but standing, same as they were. For the first time in a long while, the wind carried no gunfire, only the sound of the springs flowing again through the valley. Clear and cold. A small mercy in a country built on dust and blood. The morning after the battle smelled of smoke and rain that never came. Ash drifted through the valley like tired snow. The Clearwater ranch lay broken. Fences splintered, the barn blackened, the land quiet at last. Noah Kane stood among the ruins with his hat in his hands. His coat was torn, his shoulder bandaged, his face lined with dust and grief. The sun climbed slow over the horizon, washing everything in gold. In that light, even ruin looked almost holy. Across the yard, Tala knelt in the dry earth beside a fresh mound of dirt. She'd marked it with a single wooden cross cut from the barn's remains. At its base, she drove her Apache knife into the soil, blade first, the way her people honored warriors who'd fallen with courage. Wind stirred her hair, carrying the smell of charred wood and gunpowder. She whispered something in her own tongue, words that didn't belong to English but sounded like forgiveness. Noah walked closer, boots crunching over broken glass. He stopped a few feet behind her, hat pressed against his chest. "Will would have liked this spot," he said quietly. "Close to the springs. He always said water remembers better than stone." Tala looked up at him. Her eyes were rimmed red but steady. "He died fighting for something that mattered." "Yeah," Noah said, voice rough. "First good man I'd seen in a long while." She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. He was the bridge between two worlds. Both burned him. Noah didn't answer. He just stared at the grave, then at the empty sky beyond. The wind sighed through the scorched fence posts, whispering like the ghosts of every soul who'd ever fought for this cursed land. After a while, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring, the one he'd carried since his wife died. The metal was dull now, worn thin by years of sweat and sorrow. He turned it over once between his fingers, then clenched his hand around it. "I used to think this ring meant I still belonged to somebody," he said. "Now I reckon it just reminds me I ain't the same man she married." Tala studied him, her face softening. "Maybe that's all right," she said. "The old world's gone. We're what's left." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Guess that makes us ghosts too." She didn't smile back. "No, ghosts don't bleed." They spent the rest of the morning gathering what was left. Ammunition, saddlebags, a few tools that hadn't melted in the fire. The sun climbed higher, burning off the fog that clung to the valley. The horses grazed quietly near the spring, their reflections trembling in the water. By noon, the ranch was just bones and shadow. Noah walked through the wreckage one last time, his boots leaving tracks across the ash. He stopped in the doorway of the house, or what was left of it. The roof had caved, the floor littered with half-burnt papers, deeds, letters, pieces of a life. He bent down and picked up a rusted key from the ground. It was all that remained of the front door. Turning it in his hand, he felt the weight of what had been and what might still be. He carried it outside. Tala was tightening the saddle on her horse, her wolf-tooth pendant glinting in the light. Noah held out the key. "You ever need a place to come back to," he said, voice quiet but firm. "This land will be yours too." She stared at it, the old brass dull with soot, and shook her head slowly. "I don't belong to land anymore." He nodded once. "Maybe not, but it remembers you." Their eyes met. Two survivors bound by something deeper than blood, heavier than debt. Then she took the key, turning it once in her fingers before tucking it into her satchel. "Thank you," she said. Noah looked past her, toward the ridge where the smoke thinned into sky. "Ain't much of a home left." "It's still standing," she said. "That's more than most." They walked together to the edge of the springs. The water ran clear again, carrying flecks of ash downstream like pieces of memory. The sound of it filled the quiet, gentle, endless, unbothered by the war men had waged around it. Tala crouched, dipped her hands in, and washed the blood from her wrists. My people believed water carries the truth, she said. Whatever it touches, it remembers. Noah knelt beside her, letting the cold bite his skin. Then maybe it'll remember we tried. She looked at him, half a smile tugging at her lips. Tried don't always mean forgave. No, he said, but it's a start. For a long time they stayed like that. Two figures beside a spring, framed by fire-black earth and an endless horizon. The sun moved slow across the sky, and the world began to feel alive again. When it was time to leave, Tala saddled her horse. The mare shifted under her touch, restless but eager. Noah walked with her to the edge of the yard, where the trail cut north into the open country. He stopped there, looking out at the road. The same kind of road he'd ridden 100 times before, but now it looked different. Not like escape, like promise. You'll head back to your people? He asked. She shook her head. There ain't no tribe left, just pieces. I'll find what's next. He studied her, then nodded. You'll do fine. She swung into the saddle, the leather creaking beneath her. The wolf fang around her neck caught the light, swinging gently. You could come with me, she said, half serious. Plenty of land out west that don't care who you were. He smiled, small, genuine, the kind that reached his eyes for the first time in years. I reckon I'll stay. Somebody's got to bury the rest of the ghosts. She watched him for a beat, then gave a single nod. Don't let 'em bury you first. He tipped his hat. No promises. Tala turned her horse toward the rising sun. The light hit her face, warm and fierce, and for a moment she looked like something the desert itself had dreamed. Wild, scarred, and untamed. The mare started forward, hooves kicking up soft clouds of dust that glowed gold in the dawn. Noah stood there, watching her ride. The valley stretched out before him, half ashes, half hope. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver ring again. This time, he didn't hide it away. He slipped it onto a twig near Will's grave, beside the knife and the cross. For what it's worth, he murmured. I'm sorry. The wind carried his words away, gentle as prayer. As Tala crested the ridge, she turned for one last look. Down below, the man who had once been her enemy stood alone in the ruins, small against the vast red earth. He raised a hand in farewell. She lifted her chin in return, then spurred the mare onward. The horizon opened wide before her. Endless sky, endless road. The wolf fang around her neck caught the sun, flashing once, bright as steel, and then she was gone, swallowed by the light of Texas morning. A voice lingered in the wind, soft but certain. In the dust and blood of Texas, two souls found something worth saving. Not land, not revenge, but the courage to see each other as human.